Taking the bridge. Things have changed. I find myself collectively organising against racism in my sleepy little town of Shoreham, having thought that I'd just about got through life without being front and centre in opposition to anything. Keeping quiet, having children, being co-opted into a respectable middle-class family and equally respectable white spaces was not always easy, but it has been possible. I was bumbling along nicely towards my comfortable older age with some gentle pub nights, gardening and useful collection of qualifications in hand, and it didn't seem that bad at all. What might have been reactionary about my peroxide punk Mohican hair of 30 years ago had now transformed into majestic, low-maintenance, semi-militant growing out of my grey. Well, it felt radical at a time when others were still hitting the hair dye. In addition, I'd met someone new who joined me up to a group where women of colour were sharing thoughts on their lives. This was interesting, new friends and new perspectives, older, younger, more gay and trans than I'd encountered in one space. I'd never had any close black or brown friends, and now I was linked to a few hundred. Meeting up in the pub was a laugh, I mean a real laugh, real throwing your head back laughter at small things, followed by the hard talk of deeply perplexing injustices experienced differently by those around the table, by their friends, families or children. Events from the past could be more easily laughed off than something that happened yesterday. I was stunned at having anything to say. In fact, I had a lot to say. No one had ever talked about race openly with me before. I'd never asked advice on what to do when you've been spat at by your children or made invisible by the staff at a bar. I didn't really know the words to use. Was that racism? So 6 weeks ago, I was starting to find myself in others. I was waking up to the fact that I really didn't know what I was like, but that on closer inspection, my life seemed to have been a series of badly fitting shoes that I'd balanced on through school, degrees, marriage, reasonable jobs and a social life. It felt like finally knowing the questions you had never asked, even if you'd rehearsed the answers in every decision you had made, to not be too loud, too keen, not too disappointed. This was an expedition rather than a journey, and I was on my slightly detached way, rather like an observer watching a masterclass on how to be an authentic black woman. Then, just as I was beginning to find my feet, to find the black me, there it was on every screen, in every paper. George Floyd, the last American murdered by Minneapolis police officer, the black life squeezed out of him. This time in 8 minutes and 46 seconds of vitriolic brutality were being replayed again and again and again, and I couldn't watch it, still haven't. I hid away. I cancelled all responsibility of being mum, wife, co-author to a paper, newly self-employed, generally easygoing me, and I hid in my room as if the racism would just go away. Where was Nan when I needed the reassuring words, "Just come home," of a dead white foster mother? I didn't want my neighbours to have to avoid asking me if Black Lives Matter was more than a hashtag. I didn't want my work-stressed husband to have to see anguish across my face as I half ignored the news. I didn't want to be co-opted into the thrilling story of murderous racism with its pitying commentary and suffocating empathy. It wasn't funny being looked at with those eyes, all sought out for some pain-filled nugget of wisdom. I'd managed to shrug it off for 40 years. I had no intention of being another netted person of colour, expected to stand up or shut up, depending on whichever flavour of racist opinion was wafting over the internet. I didn't want my grown-up children to be dragged into this either. Surely they had all been okay, living their lives with a black mum who sometimes forgot she was black. It was not to be. And here I am, responding to another new friend, incensed by the very brutality that I was hiding from. He was not more insistent for my help, wanting him to organise a small protest. His anguish was that of a local white resident, fearing that he was about to get everything badly wrong. My anguish was that he thought I was black because of the colour of my skin, and that I would know how to get everything perfectly right. Then again, quite selfishly, I was also worried that as the news cycle moved on and we returned to daily life, that I would have revealed myself as a target of constant though subtle racism, and it hurt deeply. I would have exposed my own weaknesses and fear. I would seem less authentic, less genuine if I then returned to admiring other people's wildlife ponds, vegan pasty recipes and COVID-19 novelty mask making tips. What could I do? Hide again? 2 weeks later, and there I was, taking part in a small but perfectly formed demonstration with sounds, speakers, marching, stewards, drumming and even police liaison and social distancing. What a fantastically uplifting day, also the 100+ members of the new Facebook group and local paper reported online. Our semi-retired poet of some fame took the podium after the youngsters and an ex-PC. The hand-painted banner, still barely dry, survived the gale so well that as the marchers took the bridge, with historic civil rights determination, it transformed into a rectangular kite almost capable of lifting them off the ground. It was too much for some, quite overwhelmed by the show of support in this quiet coastal town that had not so long ago voted in one UKIP councillor. It is over now. Raw is how I feel, exposed and vulnerable to the elation of solidarity and the responsibility of offering up a part of myself that insists I continue to open my eyes wider every day. If I am awake, then it is to this small part in a bigger picture. It is to new connections over time and space with authentic strangers and ghosts from my past. It is to having started something, and worse still, it is having proposed to myself a vision of an unattainable future that I will now nevertheless have to nurture until you are ready to take it on.